right, guys, this is going to be Donnie coming to my Nostalgia Japan Pinku style podcast up in the garage, as you guys know out there. For the guys who are new to the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and all the good stuff. This is stay up to date. I'm not going to force you guys to subscribe, but if you watch a long format podcast and you don't subscribe, it's kind of a waste of time, so go ahead and do that. I got my guy over here. It's going to be Brian Garfield. Brian, you're currently in West Virginia, right?
I'm in West Virginia, yeah. I'm close to the line of both Virginia and Maryland, okay. So it's hardly West Virginia, but it is.
Right, and that's actually like your original birthplace, or did you move
No.
there?
This is just relatively close by to where we've lived in the past. Okay. You cross over the line into West Virginia, and the prices drop real low. So
yeah.
I end up being able to build the garage that I've got here for that reason. So
that's awesome, man. But like this, I always like to let the guys out there know like how I go about. I guess the people I'm having on the podcast, they want to know how do we know each other, how we meet them. Brian Garfield, for guys that don't know, is like my first official drip driving instructor. This is back in WDC region in the FedEx field, and it's been years, man. It's crazy. Yeah. It's been roughly this is 2007, 2008, and now it's 2020. So it's been some time, and I never forgot you, man. We've been friends on Facebook, and I honestly I always wanted to get you on the podcast, but I wanted to actually grow my production a little bit better. Because the first 10 episodes sucked. Then I got better mics, and I got another set of mics, which I got right now. And it's better. Then I got an extra studio, which is sound deadening and all that good stuff. So the sound is just better. So I wanted to have guys like yourself on, and I knew you were in the audio, so I didn't want to have you on with some crappy audio, man. So, but anyway, guys out there again, Brian was one of the guys again that gave me my first instructions on how slow I actually was at driving. And also, I came there with a drift car. So the guys were really apprehensive, but Brian was really welcoming to me and his dad. The guys had the Miatas and the Minis and all the stuff out there. So one thing I want to say right in the beginning out there, guys who are interested in getting into autocross, before we get into our speech, is just do it. There's different classes. I was one of those guys who thought you had to have a built-up car, not knowing there's a stock class or whatever, different classes. So if you want to get into it, it's low impact. It's not dangerous. You might scuff your bumper if you hit a cone, but that's on you. And it's cheap. So it's cheap practice, and actually autocross made me a better drifter by learning how to aim my car and learning how to place my car. So it's definitely benefits for the guys out there who drift only. Don't look at grip like it's boring, because it's definitely not boring. So Brian, just getting into it, man, can you give us a little bit of history on yourself, how you got into cars, and we'll go from there, man.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, I grew up with a father who was a car person. Now I will say, because of the sport, we ended up playing ice hockey when we were little, and so I think while I was into cars and I did things. My father was very adamant about my first car and keeping it clean and taking care of it on my own and all that stuff. But I didn't do any racing when I was younger, because I was already playing ice hockey, and that's expensive enough as it is. And as we know, any form of racing gets expensive pretty quick. So anyway, so I didn't do any form of racing. And when I was 16, I got my first car, and I did dumb shit on the street like just about everybody does. But like I said, I learned how to take care of my car. I respected the cars that I had, and I wanted to make them last. So it wasn't until later in 1999 when I got into autocrossing, and it was actually something that my parents did when before I was born. Right before I was born, they were autocrossing. So late 60s, and they raced an original Mini, and they stopped right after I was born. Basically, they had their first kid, and then I was the second one, and I think actually at the same time, my father had blown the motor on the Mini, and so for me growing up, sort of into cars, there was a original Mini set up as a race car sitting in the garage that was just collecting dust. So we didn't get rid of the car or anything at that time. So I would go out and I'd just clean it. And I like to sit in it and stuff like that. So the car actually looked good a lot of times, because I just like to sit in it and clean it and stuff. But anyway, so I got my license, and then in 1999, when I got into it, I called up my parents, and I saw an event, and I called up my parents and I said, "Is this what you used to do?" And they said, "Yeah." And I got them back into it. So by the time you came around, we had been involved for about 6, 7, 8 years as a family. My mother, my father, myself, my wife, and 2000, so even the boys had been driving go-karts when I met you. Right. So yeah, all 6 of us, 3 generations were autocrossing when we finally got the kids allowed to go to nationals, because the junior karts weren't allowed, in 2008, all 6 of us ran at nationals. So it was 3 generations, 6 of us, all Garfields, running it at the solo nationals in Topeka, Kansas. So that was kind of the quick story of how I got into it. But during that time, just before I met you, they needed somebody to run the school program, and I took that over, and because we also had a really good lot, as you know, at FedEx Field, which was a big stadium parking lot, that made it easy to run some significant events, which was which again, you were right there in the heyday, I think right before the recession, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, because it was 2007, 2008, because I was right at Andrews Air Force Base, and that's what really kicked me in the ass. Was I was right there. It took me 15 minutes to jump on a highway. All this time, I was honestly, like you said, man, I was one of those guys, involved in the street racing, doing drag stuff, and I actually watched. My car was never that fast enough to even line up with the guys out there that had really fast cars, so I was a spectator, and I was actually getting into drifting. So when I found it was myautox.com. Edwin Liu, which I'm pretty sure you probably know Edwin. He drives I think it's a Caterham and a Civic or something like that.
Yeah.
So
he's out in California. He comes and visits every once in a while, but we're still in contact with him as well.
Yeah, because he messaged me one night. He's like, "Hey man, you ever try this?" I was like, man, autocross that's lame, man. And then I went there, and then the thing was I knew the cars that were there, and I knew my car. Like again, I spent a bunch of time trying to be a drifter at this time, which I didn't learn to drift until I got to Japan. I was being what we call a poser, because you're drifting parking lots, and you got to watch out for cops, and you can't learn it effectively. So my first track day, I learned more in 6 hours of seat time than I did in three years of trying to do it on the street. So I knew right there, I was like, man, I got to get involved. And that's when I looked up the link Edwin sent me, which was like a year old, and I went on to myautox.com, and it was like great because everything was there. So I did FedEx. I believe there was some events in Colombia, and I did various events. So I remember I did 3 in one day actually. We started in FedEx, went down to Colombia, then we went somewhere else, and it was like we just got there just in time to get in line, tech in, and they seen the stickers and markings on the car, so he's like, all right, this guy has been racing today, so he's good to go. But it's something for me, man. Autocross again, it seems, and I'll let you definitely voice your opinion on it. From the outside looking in, you see guys just in the parking lot with cones, and guys like, man, this is not racing. This is not zebras and all the undulations of Nürburgring and Summit and all these different tracks. But again, man, it's FedEx. I think presented a good challenge, because FedEx actually, if you looked at it, FedEx, it was for the guys who don't know, it wasn't straight. It was you could see. You couldn't see over the other side of the parking lot.
Wasn't perfectly flat, and we were still running on the A lot at that time, which had all these undulations, and the lot's huge. I mean, you're not talking about like one of the ones you would have done in Colombia would have been really tiny,
small.
By doing them at stadium parking lots, and then our nationals is on an airport. It's on a massive airport tarmac. And when you have that kind of space, it doesn't necessarily, you're still not doing more than, like in this car behind me, we're doing, maybe 72, 73 miles an hour, the fastest points. But the point is that the thrill of autocross, and I'll admit, it's not something that people, if you don't understand it, watching it doesn't look very exciting. But when you're riding or you're driving, you're at the limit of grip the entire time.
Exactly.
And the whole point, of course, in autocrossing is to be at the limit of grip but not go past it. But the similarity to drifting is that it's still, both of them are car control. One of them is beyond the limit and keeping it beyond the limit, and the other one is right at the limit all the time. And in fact, I've even seen some demonstrations of like on a track where a road racer, road racer versus a drifter, to see how fast their lap times are. I can't remember the name of the guy, but it was at one of the Hyperfest events where they did that, and they had one of the better road racers in a Mustang, in one of the classes with the Mustang. This would have been almost 10 years ago. And then Von Gitten?
JR.
Yeah. So I think it was him who was there, and he was basically drifting through all the turns. Right. And what they kind of proved was it wasn't really any slower, from that standpoint. But obviously, when you come out of a turn, if you're already spinning, you've got less of a shot at getting a slingshot out of the turn. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the two sports, I think they're all about car control.
Right.
And when you autocross, and of course, especially if there wasn't, I think at that time, I don't even know if they were even doing that many drift events around here.
No, not much. There was this, of course, the FedEx was only reserved for like the Falcon show offs, and they kind of got canceled out. And then there was in Maryland, no, there was Old Dominion Speedway, which got tore down, and then they rebuilt now. And then the next up was Englishtown, New Jersey. So there was you had to go. There was not in Maryland. There was not much at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, from that standpoint, there's a ton of autocrosses,
right?
And when you and obviously, the more seat time you get, the better you are, and that's where the schools come in handy too, because schools you get so many more laps, and I mean, we do test and tunes where people have recorded 50 runs in a day, 50, 60-second runs. So I mean, that's some decent seat time particularly for autocrossing, But when you drive a car at the limit constantly over and over again, and you attend regular events, it makes car control second nature. I mean, it's just, you don't think about it. And that's why I tell people, it's a lot like, we don't sell it as a defensive driving thing, because we're not, we're not supposed to. That's not what it is. But it is a defensive driving thing, simply because if you were to avoid an accident or throw the car, turn real hard on the street, and the car loses control, because you've drifted or because you've autocrossed so much, you know exactly what to do with the car. I mean, and it's not, you're not trying to think about it. You just do it. And this is where I have a very strong opinion about this. Like when people go to a school, they go to like a Bob Bondurant or a Skip Barber or something like that, or a defensive driving thing. Those schools are great, but if that's all you do, it's never going to do anything for you on the road. Yeah. You got to do something regularly all the time. And as anybody would know, in anything that you do, the more you do it, the more it just becomes like it's no big deal and second nature, like I said, and becomes instinct. So that's why I think autocrossing and doing stuff like that regularly is so good for your street driving. And obviously doing one and the other would lend to each other very well too, the drifting versus autocrossing.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to definitely get out there right now, because I run a performance shop in Japan for the guys who may be tuning in from Brian's circle. I talk about drifting, but drifting is one of the things that kind of used to legitimize my shop, because I got pro license in drifting here. It was one of those things where I wanted to do it, and then after I got there and got the card, I was like, well, cool. I'm not going to get into any A-list celebrity parties with this license. So then I use it to legitimize my shop. But now it's kind of become a misnomer, because some of the guys, they see some of the cars. I got grip cars here as well, and they'll see mostly drift cars, and then they'll assume, it's drift shop. And drifters have a bad reputation, because there are guys out there that do half-ass things. They don't tech their cars. They don't do things. And I have to, I'll take a guy in the garage and show him R34 that has 1,200 horsepower. And it's made for grip and things like that. Then they'll be like, oh, you do grip? I'm like, yes. So I'm one of those drifters that enjoy grip driving just as much as drifting.
Yeah.
I'll do a demo at my local track where I'll do a hardcore grip lap and a switch directly into drifting. Same tires, same settings, just to show guys it's not optimum to have drift settings to do grip, but you can play between both. And I generally set my cars up to be and I've had bad results as a result of this, in a neutral state where it's not too far right to the drifting or not too far left towards grip, right in the middle. And then there's times where you have a grip car that's specifically for grip aero, things like that. So I have multiple cars now where I try to make them go both ways, and I just decide, hey, this has to go either this way or that way, because I'm getting bad results by planning in the middle. So when I go towards grip, my time, I could drop 2 seconds at SCCA, which is significant. For guys that don't know, and that's what I'm actually aiming for with SCCA time attack. I have to get into the 50s. That's my goal. So I'm going to do that. So, but again, guys that are watching, I'm not a drift nut that only speaks drifting. So I can speak grip. We can speak different things, setups, and everything. So just want to put that out there. But again, I will say again, kind of going back for autocross. Again, I was drifting a bunch before that, and I this was going out there to honestly speed around. Didn't have proper tires. I actually failed my first tech inspection, and the guy was like, all right, well, you're done. And I went to AutoZone, came back. So that drifter grind of fixing things, I went to AutoZone, got some tie rods, came back, fixed them in a lot, did a string alignment. And I was like, all right, cool, I'm ready, man. And he was like, really? He's like, yeah. And I passed the second one. So he's like, man, you drifters are crazy. And then the guy, you really didn't handle me, man. Like a lot of guys were like, hey man, don't do this, don't do that, because they seen the 240 and they seen the dented up fenders, and it was some guys didn't give me the good. They wrote me off, man. So speaking on that, man, have you sorry about that. Have you ever had to like kick anybody out as a result of not obeying the rules before?
It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I want to say maybe there's been once or twice. Maybe more turnaways at tech or something if the car is not safe and they can't make it safe.
Right.
But in terms of people doing stuff really wrong, generally what happens is if they're that type of personality, they usually wait until they're leaving and then they do something, which is bad because A, we can't kick them out; they're gone, and
right.
B, they're already giving us a bad reputation for leaving the lot that way. So we always tell people, we work really hard to get these facilities, and doing crazy stuff, outside the lot is not a great idea because then we won't be invited back.
Right.
So I will say that the drift culture, from my standpoint, has been, like you said, it tends to be a little more
loose.
Yeah. I'm trying to be PC about it.
No, it's fine. It's fine, man.
I mean, it's interesting because I've been snowboarding since the mid '80s.
Oh. Yeah.
And when I started snowboarding, A, I was young, and B, it was frowned upon. Like the skiers hated the snowboarders. Exactly. And it was the same sort of thing because a lot of the snowboarders came from skateboarding, and there was a lot of juvenile attitudes that disobeyed rules and things like that. Now, I wasn't really one of those people. Did I do some crazy stuff? Sure, but I wasn't out there to make people angry or having fun doing things wrong. It was like, oh, maybe I did something wrong and that sort of thing. It's not my personality, but I learned a lot from that too, because it's one of those things where the entire group of people was frowned upon. Right. And so, and I don't want to get too sidetracked with it, but I mean, I was snowboarding early enough that when you went out west or you went to big resorts, you weren't allowed. Right. I mean, I went out to Park City, Utah with a group of people at that 1990, and I wasn't allowed to snowboard at Park City. Right. I had to go to another resort by myself. Well, by myself from the group. Right. Because it wasn't allowed, and it was things like people not knowing about it, and or some of the attitudes of the kids that were doing it or whatever. So I think sometimes it's a shame sometimes that you do get some people that sort of ruin it for everybody else, because while you do things differently, you can still meet that happy medium of safety and organization and things like that. The illegal stuff is, I see where it comes from because you don't have any place to run, and so you just and if you don't know about autocross, or you don't know about organized drifting or track events or things like that, you're just going to try to go do something on a parking lot one time. Kind of like what we used to do when we were younger, when it would snow and we would go drift around in the snow in whatever car we had. Even in the front wheel drive cars, we'd go backwards and do crazy stuff and donuts and everything. But yeah, the drift culture, I'm not as familiar with it. I know of it, and I know it took a while before the events started happening at like FedEx Field originally, and then I really, honestly, the only thing that I've ever been to that was pure drift was a couple of the elements of the Hyperfest when they were drifting stuff. Right. But yeah, they're certainly not as common in terms of how many events they do here, and like as you said, and I think that still may be the case.
Yeah, they're trying there's another Brian Wilkerson of Mid Atlantic Motorsports. So actually, he's a grip guy that got kind of pulled into drifting, and he runs a shop. I think he was first near Harford Road, and I think they were out of Dundalk. They moved to Dundalk to a bigger factory. So I'm not sure if you know Brian or not, but he drives a Porsche that he's been building for the last like 15, 20 years, and he fixes on it a little bit and stops. And he supports like some of the bigger FD guys, Chris Forsberg, JR out of Annapolis, and all those guys right there. So yeah, man, it's definitely it's been legitimized, but it's went from the point in drifting itself, and I'll get off the topic because it's not what I want to talk to you about. But drifting, Formula Drift, of course, got more bigger. Ford is in there. You got NOS Energy Drink. All these big guys are pouring money into it now. So Formula Drift actually came out after D1GP, which was the pinnacle, and now the Americans, Australia, Europe are now they're exceeding the Japanese, because Japanese, they get in their groove, they build cars, and that's one of the things I combat here. Japanese are normally focused on one make and model, and that my thing is like all my customers don't drive Miatas, all my customers don't drive RX-7. So I work on everything. I specialize in all things Japanese, and for them, they see it as you're not a master of it. So I can go from working on a rotary to a RB26 to a 2J to a whatever. I can work on them all. So in the States there, they started getting more money into Formula Drift, and as a result, now it went from the point where there's grassroots, and then there's no middle ground. There's just everybody trying to go pro-am and pro. So now there's a lot of guys out there with really bad habits. They get these powerful cars. They have no skills. They never done autocross, never done any grip. They build these cars for 2 years and then they wreck and you never see the car again. So that's the current trend. We call it in our circle, it's IG famous or Instagram famous, where the car looks all nice, pretty. Right. They go out there, their first event, stuff it into a wall.
Yeah.
And they're so embarrassed they never come back out, man. And that's one thing you don't see a lot in grip because crashing it, especially with autocross, the biggest danger is if you happen to lose it near one of the poles, where I never seen anybody crash into a pole. Yeah. Personally, you've been in the game for a lot longer than me, so I'm pretty sure you've probably seen somebody run into one of them before. So
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so again, as far as safety and things like that, guys are there. Like I really would stress, definitely, if you think you can drive, I guarantee you can't. And you meet guys like Brian, and now you meet guys like your son Julian, who we definitely want to talk about. Yeah. When I met Julian, like I'm on his table, Julian was like maybe this tall when I first met him, and now he's
he would have been
graduated college,
he would have been somewhere around 8 years old, which was probably right around. I think he went to nationals when he was 10, but 8 years old, he was starting to drive a shifter cart at that time.
Yeah, man,
9 years old. So
and I definitely. I'm like envious, man, of guys like Julius and my local track guy he's now 24 and he's been pro since he's been 16 in drifting. He's won multiple events. He's just like, now he's 25, but he's an old man in a sport. And like I've also seen the negative effects where he was so good that he was pressured to do well. So now he's 25 when he has gray hairs now because he doesn't say it outright, but you can see like he internalizes it and he's like, oh, I gotta win this, and he does win, and he's one of the top drifters. But I can see where it goes bad. I haven't been around Julian in a while. So how's Julian as far as his progression in the motorsports and things like that?
So when he was little, he had that dream of becoming a race car driver, which a lot of the kids do, and it took us a while. We had a few warnings from people about what it was like to try to do it. And the bottom line is it involves money, even if you're good. It involves a lot of money, and it involves, a sugar daddy, if you will, or some stuff.
being you, man.
Yeah, but exactly. and so what ends up happening is you're either filthy rich and you can continue to pay for either your son or yourself to do that. Or you just stop. And so what happened was when he autocrossed all the way up until he was 13, and then he started road racing, and he ran a showroom spec Miata, and he ran 13, 14, and then a year of SCCA at 15. And by that time we had figured out that, look, this is costing a lot of money, and we can't keep doing this. Somebody's either going to give you a ride, or we're going to go back to autocrossing only, and we're going to concentrate on college. And so, long story short, after his year in SCCA, he did very well, and he did get offered actually quite a few rides, but they all came with a price tag, because all these teams are just businesses. That's all they are.
Right. Exactly.
So you need to pay your way in there, and so we basically said, well, if somebody offers you a ride and it doesn't cost you anything, you can take that. But otherwise, we're going to go back and save some money, and you're going to go to college and do whatever you want to do there. And so he studied to be a mechanical engineer. He, at our suggestion and his desire, he really made sure he made relationships with businesses, with companies that were involved in some in motorsports, some in just on automotive, and he had friended people at Mazda Motorsports and was writing articles for Mazda Motorsports, and then he actually started doing during the summer, he ended up working for them full time, if you will, during the summer, doing organizational stuff, both with the marketing side and then also with Solo Nationals and Mazda's presence in motorsports. So from the autocross or SCCA Solo side, he was the contact. He was the person that Mazda sent out and made sure, worked out the relationships with people and stuff like that. So he did that when he was a freshman after his freshman year. After his sophomore year, he through autocrossing, we've met tons of new friends all over the country and some from around the world. And years ago, back when he was little, we would have thought, no, he's got a road race to get somewhere. Well, it turns out all these friends we made autocrossing, you may not know this, but when you have a full-time job as an automotive engineer or a test driver, you don't have time to become a pro race driver. You've got a job, right? What you do have time to do is autocross.
Right.
So all of these test driving engineers are autocrossers, and they compete nationally. So all of a sudden, Julian, from the time he's 5, he's running these karts, and then from the time he's 10 years old, 10 years old, he's running nationally all the time. So he's meeting all these people. Well, now he's in college, and these people have known him for a long time, and he's obviously put up great results and everything. Right. So now he's meeting these people who are test drivers for manufacturers. So he meets the Mazda guys. The next year, he's test driving for Goodyear. Starts off as an intern,
awesome, man.
And he becomes a test driver during the summer for Goodyear as a full-on test driver for a tire center. So then the next summer, he had the choice of either going to Goodyear or trying something different. So he went and he worked with Penske Racing Shocks. And so he went and learned, more shock, damper engineering and things like that. Right. So that's it. Right there, you can see his resume getting stacked.
Right.
So as he finished school, he already had a place at Goodyear to get a job, and he met another person who worked at Tesla. And awesome. And so all of a sudden it became Goodyear or Tesla. Now Goodyear went into a hiring freeze right at the time, and so they weren't able to make him an offer at that moment, and Tesla was, and so he's now a test driver for Tesla.
That's awesome, man.
Where he is, and now as we speak, he's at the facility it's a private facility that different manufacturers use in Ohio. It's called TRC. I can't remember the exact nomenclature for it, but it's TRC. It's in Ohio, and it's where Honda, Marysville factory is, and Honda R&D. So all their testing is at this same facility. And so that's the facility Tesla uses in the continental U.S. He'll then go to New Zealand in August, and at some point he goes to Alaska for test driving. So that's where they do their testing. So
awesome, man.
Yeah, so he's still new. He just started June 1st, but he's already in the swing of things. He's got his certification from that track. They actually test them for, doesn't matter who you work for. The track itself has its own testing.
Gotcha.
And apparently he had a big smile on his face after doing the testing, saying, it was what he's been doing most of his life in terms of passing a test or whatever. But so he's doing very well. He's doing real well. And our younger son, Carson, who started at 5 as well, was pretty much overshadowed, as you can imagine. I don't know if you remember him, but he wasn't as chatty, but he was racing karts at the time. And he liked it. He didn't like everything that went along with it in terms of prep and things like that. And I got to the point when he was about 12, and I said, Julian was the other way around. He was hardcore and took care of his own stuff. And I finally turned to Carson and I said, look, if you're not going to learn to do it yourself, you don't need to do it anymore. I mean, you want to have that desire, and you have to, you have to take the load off of me. And that was one of the things that made Julian so fast was we used to go to these kart races, on the track. And the other kids are running around on Razor scooters and doing, playing with toys or whatever. And Julian was working on his kart. I mean, that's, if you look at, the stereotypical idea of Michael Schumacher was that he understood the car. He didn't just drive. He understood what the car needed and how important feedback was. And I'm sure a lot of race drivers are like that, but he was known for that. And that's what happened with Julian. Julian ended up being, and that's how you become a test driver. because you know how to give feedback, and you know what the car is doing, exactly how it's doing it, and what needs to be changed to make it improve. So that's what he is, and that's how he got there. So the irony is, here it was, this dream was shattered of not becoming a professional race car driver. But once we transitioned over to the engineering side, or getting an education, that's where the desire to become a test driver was the new dream. And as you can imagine, there aren't that many test drivers. There aren't that many positions in the entire country as a test driver. Yeah. So for him to come out of school and get a position like that is a pretty amazing accomplishment. And we tell him all the time, he worked his ass off, and we tell him all the time, you deserve it. You worked hard. You there, and don't take it for granted, because it's there aren't that many positions out there, but he worked real hard for it, so we're real proud of him.
There's no doubt, like especially mechanical engineer, like a degree. Like I guys that don't know, I went to University of Maryland for 3 years. I played. I was actually there on an academic scholarship. I was forbid to play any sports, and I was a 3-captain sports star in high school. Well, not star, but I was a starter, so I was up there. Yeah. And I captained lacrosse. And when I went to University of Maryland, of course, I wanted to play football or whatever. So they said, get your grades straight and all that stuff, and honor the scholarship. And my point of this story right here is not the football and all that stuff. I played football with guys who were pro and all that stuff. It was more so that I come from Baltimore City. Baltimore City schools, public systems are kind of like I was one of the kids that did my schoolwork, and I got a scholarship as a result. Everybody else, if you're not pushed, honestly, the teachers don't have a lot of time to really push those kids. They'll try to pull out those guys who they see have the potential. But anyway, I got to Maryland. I was way behind the power curve as far as mathematical skills, and that actually harmed me because in mechanical engineer, I know he had to do a lot of math.
He was good at math, but he wasn't. It wasn't his favorite thing at all. And and he had a lot of struggles with that, because math. I mean, you get to a level of math that's
that's why I know you say you bust his ass, man. So I'm pretty sure that was the.
I will tell you though, one of those interesting things. Back to all these friends, when he was a freshman, and we were out at nationals. Remember, he's in school at that point in September, and he's struggling with some of his classes, and we're in a group of 15, 20 people hanging out, some of us drinking beers, whatever, and he's turning to whoever, one of our friends, and saying, you're this, what was he? This particular engineer, fluid dynamics or whatever. Right. And Julian had that class, and this is what this guy does for a living.
Right.
This is
awesome.
Forget just the simple class stuff. This is what the guy does on boats for a living. And Julian's struggling in this class. And he's like, let's sit down and go over it. Fixed all the problems. Julian understood it better and moved on. And every time he had trouble, all he had to do was turn to one of these autocross buddies who was an engineer and just, hey, how do I do this? And they're like, glad to help you. Most people, especially a younger person who's trying to get through school and trying to figure out where they're going and stuff. It's great when you're in a career and you can help somebody like that. So we had a lot of friends that were real open to that. But yeah, the math is a huge part of it. So if you struggle with that, it's going to keep you out of engineering for sure.
Oh yeah, my thing was computer science. I'm really big into I was really big into computers and everything before I got into actual autocross. Or not autocross, but just automotives in general. So those skills for the computers translated into like what I do now. Is I offer, of course, I do engine building, I do tuning, I do a lot of electrical stuff. Where most people hate wiring, wiring is soothing to me because it's like you're creating life. So you take a whole harness, strip it down, then you start it up in a car. Like you're reverse engineering stuff that guys went to school for, like say Julian. Yeah. And you take it apart, you look at the pins, and you put it back together. You got a Toyota engine and a Nissan or whatever. One thing I'm working on now. Have you ever heard of a cappuccino, Suzuki cappuccino?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know what that is. I mean, I know it from the days of what's the game? What's the game that we all played on PlayStation?
What's that one like one gun?
Not Forza, but the other one that everybody.
Gran Turismo.
Gran Turismo, yeah.
Yeah, Gran Turismo.
So I, even though I was a car person, a lot of the cars that are outside the U.S. you don't learn as much about, and you play Gran Turismo, and
it's like, what's that?
And both the boys played it all the time, and it's funny. Even Carson, who wasn't as big of a car person, is all of a sudden naming certain little cars, and you might see like a right-hand drive one on the street occasionally or something like that. very rarely. But you see when it's like, oh, that's a cappuccino or whatever. You know, it's like,
yeah.
how did you know that? Well, I play the game. So
yeah, Gran Turismo is what got me in. They got me actually started like that. That's my. I didn't come from a car guy, so Gran Turismo is what got me started. And for the cappuccino, I brought that up because actually, it's a small car. It's actually
Sure.
it's smaller than the car that's behind you.
Yeah.
And I'm actually putting a 6-cylinder. It's the engine that comes from a Supra, the Chaser. So I'm cramming that engine into that car, which is just going. It's just there's no purpose for this car other than to do it because I have the skills to fabricate and you know, build things like that. So it's just one, and it's going to be in a magazine, and builds like that is what kind of separates, because there's a lot of shops in Japan. You got the top secrets and all those guys like that make all the top time attack cars and drift cars. But there's you have to make a build like that to separate yourself. So that's all I'm doing. I've already done it a little bit,
like a publicity thing.
Yeah,
you know,
that's all it is.
It gets you some recognition because it's something different.
Is.
Yeah.
And when a customer comes to the shop and say, "Hey man, could you change my brakes?" I'll point at the car like, "Yeah, I could change your brakes, man."
Yeah.
So I just do things like that. But in a nutshell, man, it's just doing crazy builds like that is what excites me. The computer skills, the electronical skills, the things that I gained in high school. I went to vocational school, which was computer repair, electronics, telecommunication. So that's what kind of I was like, man, it's computer science or nothing. So when I got to University of Maryland, I realized I was really, really lacking in the mathematical things. And for Maryland, they really had an attitude where they weren't really there to teach you anything. They were like, you should know it. We have to go. We don't have time to go backwards. So I did remedial. I passed that. I got back into Algebra 101. I failed that again. And then I honestly, my GPA went down. I was doing a bunch of street racing. I got more involved into that. Then I kind of, I had a $9,000 scholarship, man. And I just kind of, my third year, I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go to the military. And people call me dumb for doing it and whatever. And, now I'm here in Japan. I got my own shop and family and things like that. So it worked out. I did a little bit more schooling. Actually, I have about maybe 30 more credits that I need to go ahead and do and knock out and kind of get that put behind me. But my thing about that is the guy, like I say, Julian made it out. It was definitely tough. But there's a lot of guys that don't, everybody always point out, Mark Zuckerberg and all those guys that are now, maybe a secret trillionaire and he's just reporting he's a billionaire. But not saying dropping out is cool. But I kind of needed a break.
Yeah, you do what makes you happy, and
right.
Our younger son Carson. I mean, he's the opposite of Julian. Julian's known what he's done, what he's going to do for a long time, and Carson went into school for one thing and then changed again and then changed again and then by his junior year wanted to drop out, and we convinced him to just whatever you want to do. While you're in school, just don't worry about what people expect, or just do what you want to do to be happy, but just get your degree. We wanted him to finish his degree, and so he's got one more year, but yeah, a lot of people do that, and a lot of times it's the third year that gets to people too. It's pretty well known, but yeah, it's tough to know at a younger age what you're going to do in the long run. So when you go to school, you might bounce around like that and or take a break or whatever. So
right. And you brought up a great fact a little bit ago. You were saying that the guys gave you like warnings and like, kind of starting the kid young into motorsports, and you said guys gave you warnings. What were some of the things that they said watch out for? And also, what would you say to a dad out there who wants, like me? I mean, my kids are all around cars. They come to my shop. It's like I don't teach them these things. They just automatically pick up the car. They want to go under the lift, which I don't allow them to go under the lift because they're small, hazardous, and things like that. And I can't wait to get them in the shop and actually get some free child labor out of them and things like that. So, so what advice would you give to a dad that's got a newborn? He wants to get him into racing and be the next Lewis Hamilton or something like that.
I think, we went through the experience of for one thing, teaching responsibility to kids at an early age is good for everybody. It's good for every kid. We personally feel like, with Julian and with Carson, we did the same thing, but we were always, okay, you can do this, now try this. You can do this, now try this. So Julian was that kid who, at 2.5 years old, climbed up on the counter, got himself a bowl and made him some cereal. I mean, he did things. When it came to driving, as soon as he was getting fast in the cart, we put him in a shifter cart. As soon as he was getting fast in the shifter cart, we put him in a car. As soon as he was getting fast in a car, we're just trying to get him in a faster car. I mean,
right.
there were things let's just say that it wasn't always by the book, that he was driving things pretty early.
Right.
And some pretty powerful cars. So, but in terms of, I think it was a wake up call for us, and we did hear early on that it's going to take a lot of money to become a race car driver. It's not going to be something. I mean, there's always going to be the right place, right time kind of thing, but that's pretty rare. Most of it's going to be you either somehow get a sponsor behind you, or you have a lot of money, or whatever. Otherwise, don't assume that it's able to happen. I mean, I never want to tell people, there's always you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it.
Right.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, but you don't instantly make money. So when it comes to a race team saying, yeah, we want you to run with us, you can be the number one driver for $50,000 a weekend. Yeah. I mean, what do? I'm sorry, I'm not gonna take out another mortgage on my house so my kid can run 4 weekends of racing. I mean, it's just that's not how it works. So I think the big thing is that follow what they're passionate about. There's a father-son that we know the father from autocrossing. His name's Van Townsend, and his son is named Phineas. And if you look him up, you'll find him real quick. So Van has always lived in Colorado, and he's a stay-at-home dad. And he started snowboarding with him really early, like so early he was just basically carrying him, Right. And then he got him a little board that was like this big, right? and of course the interesting thing about kids is you can. I'm going to say this tongue in cheek. You can abuse them in terms of them falling and like things that you and I would get hurt. I would particularly get hurt really quick. Kids, when they're 3 feet off the ground, you can let them fall down the whole hill and they'll get up and laugh and move on. And so at that age, he was letting Phineas do whatever. So, from when he goes straight down the hill to all of a sudden he still can't make turns, but he's sending him off a jump. And Phineas, jumping and landing. Next thing you know, he's landing them. And now I think, how old is he? You have to look him up. But if you look him up, like I said, you'll find him real fast. So he's been snowboarding this whole time since he was 2, 3 years old or whatever. And they do it father and son. They're always out there. And he doesn't push them, but as a kid, the kid wants to be pushed. They want to go further. They want to do more. They want to learn more and stuff. They don't get hurt very easy. Right. So that makes it easier if they're enjoying it, then take them to the next level as long as they're enjoying it. And like I said, I had one of each. I had one that never wanted anything other than racing, cars, everything. I had to teach Julian how to recognize that people were tuning him out because he wanted to talk about cars all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And you know how that is, right?
Yeah.
You get in a conversation with somebody who's not a car person.
You learn how not to. You just don't bring it up.
Oh, or you start talking and you see them go, and you see them start going, Yeah. You realize they're not paying attention anymore.
Yeah.
Julian was only like 10 or 11 years old, and I'm teaching him this because he wanted to talk about cars all the time. And so jump to the other side, I had Carson who enjoyed driving the kart, and like any kid would do, going fast, doing things with it, but didn't want to talk about cars all the time, didn't have that huge interest in cars. So he got out of it, and now he has a Mini Cooper and he enjoys driving it. I think he enjoys it enough. He used to say, just get me an automatic Toyota Corolla and I'll be fine. I don't care. Or I don't need a car. He actually went through a phase of that. Yeah. I think now when he drove I have an RSX Type S, and he drove that one day and he's like, this is fun, because the Mini is a great handling car, but doesn't have that speed. Right. And when he hit the VTEC and the RSX, he's like, wow, this is, so he's got a little bit of that car person in him. A lot of guys do, a lot of people do. But he's not in any way like Julian, in terms of what he enjoyed and how much he could be pushed. So, and that's, like I said, so that's why at 12 years old, it was like, you either put the effort in because you enjoy it or you stop. And he chose to stop, and he moved on to like soccer and put a lot of time into that. But
it's still like for Carson, it's still one of those things where like I always, cause I compete in martial arts. I do I do music. I do music, martial arts, cars is pretty much the nucleus of what I do. So the thing about it, like you said, yourself, your family, you're out at, you're out somewhere eating or whatever. In that restaurant, you're the only guy. You're like the top drivers in the restaurant. In that radius, you're the top drivers in there. So like you got Carson, who is not really into like deep into it, but still at any given point, if something went down and it was like we got a race for our lives, he'll hop in the car and do better than anybody else around him.
Sure, absolutely.
And it's like one of those alter ego like buried skill sets that nobody knows about because he don't talk about it. But he'll be like, "Hey, dude, you suck at Apex," and they're like, "What do you mean Apex? And you're clipping? Or what do you mean clipping points?" Yeah. So like he's even though he's not like deep into it, he's still way well off in skill sets than everybody else around him. That's why I said earlier too that he was overshadowed.
Yeah. I mean, he went to nationals and in a group of 15 kids, he got third or fourth, I think was his best finish there, and so he was still pretty quick. But next to Julian, it was hard to fast. But it's also in the family as a whole fun thing. I mean, this car was really, I would have never spent the money on it if it wasn't for Lisa. I mean, wife is she enjoys cars and she enjoys racing them, and this, the reason we ended up with this was because we had raced shifter karts for me it was 6 years, and for Lisa it was actually 8 years. I stopped and she kept going, and when it got to the point where it was beating up on us a little bit more and maintaining it was just, again, it was one of these things. I had maintained karts for so many years. I got a little tired of it, but so we switched over and, we did a couple different things. We had a highly modified, first gen Miata. And then I went from that to a newer Miata. And I also had a few little things in between, but early on, right after we got out of karts, I co-drove one of these. And that year Lisa was in a kart and her kart broke just prior to nationals, and she jumped in with us, driving a Caterham, and she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And so in the coming years, when we started driving other cars, again, small cars. I mean, first gen Miata, fourth gen Miata, Mini Coopers, things like that, and everything she drove, she's like, it's just not the same. And she knew that the Caterham was closer to driving a go-kart, and so. We lost a dear friend of ours, and I don't know if you remember him. He was around at the time, Mike Klein. He was a great friend, and he used to travel with us he was a shifter kart driver, and he used to travel all over the country with us to those events, and was basically like an uncle to the boys. And he passed away of cancer very young age, and this was about two and a half years ago now. And Lisa and I started talking. We're like, we want this car. We can't afford to do it right now, but I don't want to find out that, I have cancer or you have cancer or somebody, we want to do this now. And so we're still paying for it, but we went ahead and did it. And so the car's a blast. And actually lately, because of what's been going on with COVID and everything, we haven't been autocrossing, but I've been I know where to take the car back to, but I've actually been dialing it more for the street lately, making it more comfortable, softening the spring rates up a lot, stuff like that. But and trying to make it more streetable and friendly, more padding in the seats because they're just curtains in there. And this thing was brutal on the street. I mean, it was just bad, but yeah. So, but in terms of the kids, I think it's just one of those things where you just have to go where they take you, you can steer them a little bit, and because dad's in the garage, they want to be in the garage. Right. And then they'll get to a certain point where it won't they don't care if dad's in the garage anymore. And they either want to be in the garage themselves or they want to go do something else. Yeah. Obviously, a lot of kids get put in that first toy driving car, a little electric car or whatever, and very few of them go on to the go-kart. But obviously, that's the next step. I think if they have an interest, what we did was, you get them in the battery-powered car a lot, and you throw some cones on the driveway or wherever you can that's safe, and you let them learn the responsibility that they're behind, in our case, a big massive steel that can kill people. But when they're in that little plastic battery-powered car, I used to jump in front of them on purpose. They had to hit the brakes. And if they hit me, then I would, scold them a little bit. You need to then make sure that you don't hit people because it hurts.
Right.
Obviously in reality, it wasn't that big a deal. But I want to make sure that they understand that the next step is something faster and something more powerful and something more dangerous and whatever. And like the go-kart and then of course the car after that. But yeah, anything from Matchbox cars to to battery powered cars and magazines and the pictures and the cool colors and the cool noises the cars make and in some cases the cool smells the cars have and all that stuff applies and the kids take it all in, and it's just a matter. Just a quick example, my next door neighbor who had a son who was growing up at the exact same time, and my next door neighbor was actually a BMW instructor for the track. And his son never had any interest at all. And it was kind of a bummer for him. But at the same time, it was well, he's not into it. That's the way it goes. But it's just an example of, dad does it all the time. Dad's into it. Son's not, But you'll see that all the time. You'll see a son or the daughter who hangs out with the dad or the mom or whoever and who's into cars and does it all the time. And that's just the direction they're going to go. And some of them become the engineers or the shop mechanics or body shop or whatever, because they enjoy being around cars. And there's, I think the neat thing, just to sort of segue into car culture in general, is there's so much to a car that applies to just about everything. Like you were talking about electronics and wiring, computers in cars. Obviously now with Julian's becoming a software engineer. He's actually training to become a software engineer because they need him to work on to be able to understand the Tesla stuff.
Right.
But the metals, the paint, the artistic form of a car, there's so much involved to it. And I've been doing a lot of car shows lately because we don't have autocrosses, and one of the reasons we wanted to get this car was because it's also cool for the the cruising nights and the car culture stuff. And one of the things that I've learned to appreciate, of course, when I was younger and just starting autocrossing too, I had this little bit of attitude of, you don't understand how a car handles or how fast it is or whatever. Or if you're drag racing, you're only driving in a straight line, or if you're doing stance, you're
oh man,
you're ruining the car.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I've come to appreciate, and don't get me wrong, I still don't like a lot of that stuff. Yeah. But what I've come to appreciate is if anything, we're right here together in the sense that we both have this desire for cars and the culture of it. Now, of course, in the aspect of cars, we're probably, we're more like this.
You're right.
But like there was a guy who pulled in. I went to a show on Father's Day, and there was a GTR that pulled in all stanced, and I'm like, oh, man, what are you doing?
You just ruined it.
but it's another culture, It's what they want to do with cars, and I appreciate that they still appreciate cars, and that. I guess my way of looking at that is that's art. It's because it's not handling. It's not good for speed. It's art. It's just and I'm pretty sure this was Japan that I came across a website at one point and I saw some really crazy stuff that they were doing with cars with these weird exhausts that were coming out of the back.
That's called Bosusoku. It's a that comes from it derives from guys. First they started from bikes because in Japan, have you ever been to Japan before?
No.
All right, so in Japan, the driving, getting your license is very expensive for just a regular car. Then you have to test for manual, then you have to test for trucks. So the driving school here is mandatory and has been mandatory since like the 50s. I think it's roughly about $3,000 to $4,000 equivalent yen to US. So they got to go there. So, but bike for anything 125 cc's and under, you don't require a license or a anything. You just make sure it has like a little tag from the city hall just to know it's not stolen. But so they hear the biker gang. So the Bosusoku guys, they would put like these big exhaust pipes on a bike, 110 cc. So it sounds more powerful than what it really is.
Yeah.
And they would put the big pipes in it. Then those guys got licensed and they transferred over to the cars. So the cars, you're right, they have like these crazy long bumpers on it and splitters and spoilers and exhaust. They're star shaped and they're not fast. They're just obnoxiously loud and they're really illegal. In Japan, you have a biannual safety inspection, which It's the reason why I have 29 cars right now in my own possession, because most of the cars, after a certain point, it's not worth demodifying or saving for. It's not. Well, it'll fail the test because you got a roll cage in without padding or something like that. You don't want to take the roll cage out, so you just get another car. So for me, I did about 2 years, and I get another car, and I just kept doing that, repeating that process. Some guys, they just give up on a car because maybe it has a rust spot in the floorboard. Right. Just cut that out, put new metal in it. So a lot of those guys, a lot of those cars, they end up they're not road legal. You can get a certificate and drive it to a car show just for the weekend, and then you don't drive it anymore. So there's a lot of wild cars here, a lot of a lot of Tokyo area, a lot of Ferraris, a lot of MP1s, a lot of all that stuff there. So the car culture.
Sorry, I want to interrupt you just real quick because it has to do with this. Where does this fall in line with what I had read or heard that one of the reasons, because I got an import motor. This is a K20A.
Okay, yeah. Awesome.
This is out of a Euro Accord R, and they're all supposed to be under 50,000 miles. There's some law that has to do with that, or
they will, if it's over 80,000 kilometers, they will you'll get a slightly higher tax. That's their way of, because the cars last. Like the K20 you got right there is going to last forever as long as you keep oil in it. And even without oil, it's going to last because it's Honda. What they want to do, like I guess you say, want to keep politically correct, but I'll say how it is. In America, you got the Ford Mustang GT, then you got everything else. You got the Fiesta and all that stuff.
Right.
It's only going to last 2 years. And in Japan, the cars last forever.
Right.
So to get the guys to get newer cars, they tax them for driving a higher mileage older car.
Okay.
So the only guys in Japan you see driving an old like Cedric or something that's older like a Hachiroku are guys that are into it. If you're not into it, you drive the latest cars because you want to pay less money. Then also the K like for example the Caterham would be considered a K car here because it's under a certain width, a certain length, and also the not so much the engine. Well, actually, I'll take that back because it has a 2-liter in it. It wouldn't be a K because K's is under I believe under 1 liter or something like that.
Okay.
So the K cars are cheap on tax. For a tax, Japanese, you will pay about maybe $200 for a regular size car, RSX, RX-7, you're gonna pay $540 for road tax, and that's road tax. So yeah. So anyway, in a nutshell, to answer your question, they do that to get people to buy new cars. That's it. So you go to the junkyards here. The junkyards are not junkyards here. They're used cars lots that with cars stacked on top of each other because each one of those cars, they start up, they drive. They may have like a dragging brake caliper on the left side, or it has a stuffed cat catalytic converter or something like that. But the cars are a junkyard in Japan can be a used car lot somewhere in Tennessee.
Yeah,
like, seriously. It's crazy. Right. So you see all this stuff there, but the culture overall, in like you said in America, like you said in the car thing, and to bring it to kind of make it make sense, in the States, or I think worldwide, we're still the minority as far as car people, as far as guys who are really into cars versus guys who are into like doing whatever, doing cosplay or doing reenactments of war and things like that, or whatever, or just sports, being into sports. There's more people into the Tennessee Titans than there is into auto racing. There's a very or I should kind of take that back, that actually do it, that actually spend the money, build the cars, go and do the testing tunes and everything, and everybody else kind of just spectate. So we're in it. I'm one of the guys where, and I think I'm growing out of it a little bit. I can't watch. I can't go to an event if my car is broken and I don't have the cash. It boils my blood to watch somebody else.
Sure. I mean, I would absolutely. I would never go to an autocross if I wasn't driving. Well, let me rephrase that. I have before, like, because I'm on the committee and that sort of thing. Right. Generally, even if my car's not working, I'll get a ride in somebody else's that I can still race that day or do something. I don't know if I've ever gone the whole day without driving. I'm pretty sure I've driven every single time. So I mean, it's definitely not something that you can just sit back and watch. You want to do it, and that's actually how I've always felt about all sports, though. Growing up, I played ice hockey and I watched a little bit of it on television. But my brother and my father would always watch football. Mostly football and hockey, maybe a little baseball or basketball, but they still to this day watch it together and talk about it and things like that. I was always like, you know what, I can't watch it. I just want to go do it. That's the only thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more of a doer. You know, I can't watch the stuff. I've been to a couple of, like, if it's a new style event, I think when what were they calling it? Global Rallycross. I think Global Rallycross is what they were calling when they were setting up at stadiums, sort of big parking lots, and they bring in the dirt and they would make tracks, and it was sort of pavement and dirt. There was one of those in DC at one point. We went to one of those, and that's cool to watch, especially to be there in person. But and there's other racing events I'll watch on TV, and I do follow Formula One. But even that gets a little old. You know, I want to do stuff. I don't want to watch it on TV. So
yeah, I think it's just it comes down to like there's people that are just perfectly fine with sitting like in the rafters and observing, and I just never been one of those people personally. I've always, people call it like you're like I guess you want to bring attention to yourself, but it's not that. It's just that there's doers and there's watchers, and it's this type of people. Like, for example, you see like a lot of this stuff going on, all this stuff going on, right? I don't really talk about too much with the corona and the riots and all that stuff. Right. Like, I'm not the guy that would be holding the camera. Like, if somebody's in danger, and I've done it multiple times in the military, and see people, I've done it. I haven't even recorded it. It's like, I've helped somebody, somebody's crashed. I'll go see if they're okay or whatever. The car's on fire, pull them out the car. And I didn't record it. And it was like, cool, that would have been a bunch of likes and stuff on YouTube. But it's a different generation, man, where I'm 37, but
it's not really the way to do it. Yeah. I mean, if somebody's
like, man, let's front, like, you got the camera behind you. So you got to start the app up, and then the guys are burning in his car. And that's 5 seconds for your app to open up. And you got to, it's like, man, just do it. And social media, again, like, us being able to talk here, the technology is great, but I think a lot of people use it wrong. And one thing I get into, kind of like to blend everything with the car stuff. I run automotive performance shop. I'm 37, and most guys, I mean, that's young to have a whole. You got a whole shop, international thing. I can ship cars. I can do everything. Yeah. So the guys come here that are 21, 22 years old. When I got in the game in '99, there was only Chilton manuals. So there was no internet. There was only, you go to AutoZone and read the book a little bit, and the guy would scream at you for not buying it. Right. And there was no scanners available. Yeah. They were not small. So the guys, now you have YouTube, you got Google, you got all this. Now you can pretty much you can teach yourself, I guess, slightly to be an engineer just by watching and reading the stuff out
a lot
there.
Of it is just step-by-step instructions on certain things. And the professionals in each of those fields need to make a living, but there's a lot of stuff too that you want to do on your own anyway, and you're going to find a way to do it. Now it's just a little quicker by watching the YouTube video as opposed to having to find the right book or whatever. But it's
it's definitely different, man. It's just technology is great. I just think it's I think for us tooling has made you see a lot more cooler builds from guys that they're doing their garage stuff now, because everybody, you can get a TIG welder now for under $100,000 that does both DC AC. You could do aluminum. So back in the day, I remember, like, I take it for granted now because I got benders, aluminum, and all the stuff downstairs. And 15 years ago, I was on eBay paying somebody $50 for a bin, a S bin with a weld in the middle with a filter on it. Now I could do that. I could just make it right now. And so the technology, the tooling has made things like CNC machines are a lot smaller. You can make a lot more parts and everything. And for the catamaran behind you, you guys bought it. It was already assembled and everything. Or
well, just to be clear, this is a Stalker. This is a
sorry,
the Brunton Stalker. So this is a replica. It's not actually a Caterham. But and just in brief, for people to understand, the Lotus 7 was the 50s, 60s into the 70s, and then Lotus sold the rights to Caterham, and then. And so a Caterham today is still a pure 7, Super 7, like the Lotus. It's just a different name in front of it, but it's not like a Caterham's not a copy of a Lotus. This is a copy of a Lotus or a copy of a Caterham. So the body and everything's the same, but the chassis is a little bigger. Brunton, or it's not Brunton anymore. It's Stalker Cars. Scott Meinhardt runs the company now, and they build them more for racing. So so this car is actually got actually, I can show you if you want. Is that something you'd want on the show?
That's cool. If
I can walk around with it.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it'll be the first podcast walk around.
So it's going to be a little tougher because this is a computer, but So basically what it is if you look at the suspension, it's a push rod and bell crank style suspension. Let me get this. I'm going to put it down for a second. You're gonna
no problem.
All right. Okay. So if you look in there, you can see that it's an inboard shock setup. Okay. And so each of these things you've got double adjustable shocks, and then your spring rate changes based on the location of your push rod, which moves through all these holes here. Yep. Can you see that all?
I can see it.
So the significance of this car is that it's basically it looks like a Caterham, but it's more designed for, and the guy who builds them is an autocrosser. And so he has two brothers that autocross nationally, and so he builds them for that. So the front suspension is also an inboard shock setup.
Okay.
And then the cool thing about it too is that everything's right there.
Yeah. Easy to work on.
You want to pull the oil filter off? It's right there. So it's real easy to work on and real lightweight. But the Stalker is a little heavier than a Caterham. So a Caterham, I would say a Caterham is about in race trim is probably about 1,000 or 1,100 pounds, something like that. A little flare there.
A little glare.
Yeah. So this one in race trim is about 1,350 pounds. And then about 1,500 in street trim with a full tank of gas. So 1,500 that's this car heavy is 1,500. Right. But I'm actually overweight for the class that we run. Unfortunately, because it's not a Caterham, because it's not the chassis is not as thin, and there's more metal in this one. It ends up being I think my weight with driver is supposed to be 1,420, and I'm about 1,510, I think it is, something like that. So
it's already like it's not like much you can remove from it. It's already
I can go to a lighter weight battery. I can obviously take out the passenger seat when we run, things like that. But we're not as worried about being competitive as we used to be. We're just trying to enjoy the car now. But yeah, it's such a hoot. And the cool thing is it's a unique car. So you go to these cars and coffee or car show kind of things. People want to know about it. It's fun. And that's obviously just like I am with you right now. That's one of those things I enjoy doing is just meeting new people and hanging out and talking about cars with people. And while the COVID thing has kept me away from racing this season completely, so it's enlightened me so much more in the car show thing. So I'm trying to go to them every weekend. And sometimes 2 and 3 in a weekend. I'm doing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday sometimes. This car had 400 miles on it coming into this year, in March. And for a car that looks like that and it's not an everyday driver, I put 800 miles on it in the last couple of months. So I'm driving it a ton. So, and I'm enjoying it, and that's what that's why we do this stuff. So
it's definitely cool. Like here in Japan, the classes of there's a lot more guys that do static and car shows than there are guys that actually race. So, when you're in a scene, it seems like you go to the event, there's 70 cars. So you feel like when you're in Tsukuba or you're at Fuji or whatever, all the major circuits, you're like, oh man, this is a big thing. But then you get home, like you realize there's only 80 guys there plus the staff, who some of those guys, they want to be on a track, but they don't have the skills. They don't want to push their car. It's the only car. Then they'll end up doing the staff for the events, the flagging and things like that. Right. So they can still be involved with it, be around the smells, be around the cars. You see an R35, you see a Lotus or whatever. And it's a pretty cool thing, but it's just like one of those things you still realize, man, we're still, it's crazy. As big as it is, it's like when you think about it, like, man, we're still a minority. So all these 100 cars in this parking lot, there's 300 people over there at Starbucks right now on just watching Game of Thrones or whatever, man. Right. So no niggas Game of Thrones. I watched every episode out there, guys. Right. No, not hating on it, but just an example. But it's just one of those things where in a car life, before it was actually my livelihood. Now where it actually makes me money and keeps my family fed and things like that. I always used to say it was my life and everything. And then like it's a different thing where cars. It's nothing wrong with saying that, but it's just some guys. I would say I benefit from guys quitting. And a lot of guys, they get into it, they buy a car, buy a GTR, they spend, they get a loan for 15 grand.
Yeah.
And then they got to get another loan for 20 grand to fix the car and bring it back to what it was 20 years ago. And that just about kills them when they do that. I build the engine for them. I put a new clutch in it. And I'm like, well, now all the weak stuff is going like your bushings, your suspension.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you need another $6 grand for that. And they're like, man, I thought that. I'm like, no, dude, that was only one part of the car. And, so the biggest thing I do here now, I have cars that are 800 horsepower, 600 horsepower, but I get the best satisfaction out of driving cars with at least a small amount of power, because I show the guys I can take 300 horsepower, 280 horsepower with suspension settings, and I can beat your car that's 500 horsepower, and I love doing it. And it only works on guys that are honestly not at the level of driving.
Sure. No, the newer people. Like you were saying earlier, right. I mean, a lot of people think they can drive.
Right.
But if they, or set up a car, but if they can't do those things and they think they can, they're way off base. And that's what happens. Unfortunately, that's also what happens. That's why if you're trying to grow a sport or something, you have to tiptoe around it a little bit, because people are discouraged a lot easier when the bar is so much higher than they realize.
Oh, yeah.
So for like new autocrossers, a lot of times you might lose somebody because they come out, initially, and they think they're fast, and they'll come to a DC region, autocross, and they get killed. I mean, by everybody, not just, and these are people who thought they were they were going to be one of the fastest people there.
The stock Civic or stock Miata with RT615s on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where you have to kind of, if you want to grow the sport or you want more people to be involved, you have to be a little bit careful about how you present it. And,
right.
And don't tell people they suck and, you want to come back. But at the same time, there's also some people, I mean, we've run into people before that you don't want back anyway. I mean, the attitude, the arrogance. They're not doing anything good for the sport by coming into it. But, sometimes it's people with a lot of money, sometimes people with a lot of attitude. So, but
I met some great guys. One of the guys I still remember to the day I met actually at the school was a guy his name is John. He drove I forgot what kind of Porsche it was, but he had just got the Porsche. And I think he had S2000 before that, and we were at the same school. It was a black. I forgot. I'll look him up, but I remember the school we did over there across in a small parking lot, across from the bigger parking lot. And like you said, man,
it was on the H lot, right? You're talking about this. Yeah, it was right across from the A lot.
Yeah, and you guys were, man. Again, man, it's like I could tell you guys been. I could just I met your dad, and I could tell I talked to him a little bit. I could tell you guys been in it. Something I sensed that I'm like, man, these guys have been in it for a while, for a long time. Just how relaxed you were around the car, how calm you were, and I was still in that phase where I was just getting out of the. I was putting the street stuff behind me because I was in the military at that time when you met me. I was actually actually right after you met me, I went to Iraq, and then I got back from Iraq, and then I went to Japan. So I was only 2007. So I was just I was leaving the street stuff behind and like the unofficial car shows and going into racing. So I was really like, again, starting over again, meeting new guys. And I was like, man, these guys I was again mad because I spent all these years on the street wasting time. And I could have been doing autocross back in like 03, 04, man. And
look at me, I was a car person. And you figure I was in 1999, I was 27 years old. That's when I discovered it, and my parents did it. Right. My parents did it, but they didn't
push it on you. Yeah.
They didn't push it on me or anything. And about all I did at the older age was, I mean, I probably did some dumb stuff in the car, and my father taught me some lessons, but reading car magazines, and that's it. But there was never. There wasn't. I don't think there was much of a desire, I guess, for them to get us into the racing stuff. Probably because they knew it was going to be a money pit,
Yeah.
But when I got into it and I got them back into it, it was really cool for the family. And that's the nice thing is that we had an unusual scenario where we got all six of us autocrossing, and that made it great because while it was a long day, because we were always there for the entire event. We were there as a family,
Right.
children, parents, and grandparents, all the time, which was really cool. And those years were awesome. My father's still involved a little bit, but he's, getting up there in age, and it's a little harder for him to go the long days. My mother stopped. It really, got hard for her to be out there all day on the pavement all day. But yeah, it's a really cool thing to do with the family. And I think that's why so many parents get excited if their kid's interested in it. And there's a few families, there's many families I know around the country that do this together, but there's one particular local family. It's a mother. It was the parents that were into it. I think they were Porsche Club before they met, before they got into the SCCA stuff. Or maybe it was BMW Club. I can't remember, but they were friends with Danny Kao. I don't know if you ever met or remember Danny Kao.
I know the name.
Yeah. So I think she was his boss, Danny's boss or something. And so he got them to come out. So the parents came out, and then the next thing you know, we're doing schools with them. And then their 16-year-old son came out and getting his driver's license and did autocross schools. And then their daughter did it. So there's 4 of them that do it now together. And again, there's value in the family time, and there's value in the driving skill. All of that's important. And that's what makes these motorsports so cool. So there's a trend, there's a connection between the road and then there's, of course, like I said, about how the car is, there's so many aspects to the car that they can be attractive to somebody, whether it's the artistic part of it, or the paint, or the wheels, the tires, the electronics, the software, all that stuff. There's just so many cool things about cars that I think we all enjoy, and that's why we stay with it for so long. I don't know too many people that just disappear out of the car scene.
No, I think you're either into it. You kind of get. I'm pretty sure again you run into guys who've been in the game a long time. Again, they get into it. They generally get. Some guys come from a family that do it, so they got that kind of like know it all, like I know everything type of deal. And then you got the guys who are just fresh into it. Again, I kind of go back to I touched on a little bit. I didn't come from a family that were into cars. I got into cars by Gran Turismo 1, and now I got Gran Turismo GT Sport downstairs. I got 3 rigs set up. And then even with the Gran Turismo, it's controller back in the day. Now games are designed for wheels. So I probably got if I'll add up, I think I have about maybe $6,000 worth of PC and seats and wheels and stuff downstairs. And the guys come in. That's
how Julian learned. That's where he started on Gran Turismo. That's where he started along with battery-powered cars and stuff. But that's how he started. And he learned how to drive rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, rear engine, mid-engine. I mean, all that that train. I mean, it's not. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a great simulator, but it still handled the way it was supposed to.
Right.
And so there's little setups with the little chassis with the wheels.
It's totally again. Me being an actual racer now, like one thing I'm going to go towards, was going to be this summer, but next summer when everything releases, was getting my pro grip license, because they have there's the JAF level. There's JAF is pretty much like SCCA in Japan. It's called JAF, Japan Automotive Federation. So to get so you see any of the guys doing Tsukuba time attacks, whatever, you got to start at JAF first. You can't just pop into the event, even if you got a car, a shop. You got to start. Your acceleration will be fast. I got S2000s, I got MR2s, MRSs, and so I show up with a car. I do they have you literally do figure eights. You do you got to do an E-rig J turn. You got to do all these different things to show the levels. Then you go to the next level. Then you rank up. Then that's their way of knowing when you get to the event, they know you can drive. So
right.
It'll be a weekend for me to go through all that stuff and get all my things. So that's my focus was drifting at first. Now I'm like, drifting doesn't make money. I've been open 4 years. I've made $0 from a drifter. $0. Yeah. All my money comes from grip guys and street guys. So it was like one of those things where I had to. Now I have to really get those licenses to show guys I'm not just talking. When I go to the track and I show them, my validation is a Japanese guy saying I'm very fast, and again I attribute it to autocross. I always think of, man, every time I'm on a track, man, it sounds weird. I'm talking to you now. I'm like, man, Brian, what he told me. One thing I picked up from you. We only met a few times out there. Was you told me you're either on the gas or off the gas. You're not thinking about. You're not hovering over it. You're on the brakes or you're off the brakes. And that was one of the things I always think about. And it's like when I go into an Apex, I dive in, or where some guys, I guess, because my car is on a truck. I understand they got to drive home, so they can't go 100%. They got to go 95%. So
Yep.
me, I'm going 110%. I don't really. If I break it, I'm gonna put it on the trailer.
Right.
So they're like, "Hey man, you're fast," and I'm lapping turbo. Like there's what was Lotus out there. There was turbocharged RSX is supercharged, and I'm lapping these guys. They're pulling over, and I got this bone stock MRS at this particular event. Never drove it before. Never pushed MRS. So I spun out. I'm like, oh man, this Mitch with this rear engine, it comes around fast.
Yep.
So
But
I was learning.
Yeah, those mid-engines are more touchy with the throttle, but they dance. I mean, they do whatever they want to do.
But about 30 laps in, I was actually, because I had so much experience with rear-wheel drive, about 30 laps in, I was actually, it was getting boring because the guys they were, Japanese are weird, man. Japanese, they're very prideful people. They won't say it outright, but they don't like to be shown up, especially by, we call them gaijins or foreigners.
Yeah.
And for a foreigner, especially, it doesn't have, Japan don't care about color and all that stuff. But I'm a 240 pound, 230 pound black guy with a mohawk. Yeah. And they're like, this guy can't drive it. And I go out there and lap him. And so they get kind of discouraged. They'll come, instead of you lapping them, they'll come off the track. So then it ended up me being, I had the whole track to myself in the event. All these guys are watching. And then I just started putting on the show. So I started like this pretty much lifting off, oversteer, snap over, just kind of this drifting grip. I was doing a drift grip demo.
Right.
And I come off the track and then I pop the boot or the trunk or whatever you want to call it. And they're like, oh, stock. I'm like, yeah, completely stock. Only suspension, stock wheel, stock seat, stock 1ZZ, stock everything.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe it. And I was like, dude, like it's and that right there kind of got me into showing my customers I can do more with less. And it's a good selling point.
Yeah. Well, you should start schools over there.
I did. I started. Well, of course, I was in the drifting thing, so I started drifting and automatically canceled that because the maintenance on maintaining a drift car is very for guys to go out there burning tires, brakes, crashing and stuff. It's like so I do have a bunch of cars I'm setting up for grip only. And once again, everything is supposed to start this summer, but this year is a wash. To be honest. So next spring I'll do grip lessons with front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, MR. I got an NSX, but that's mine. Nobody's driving that one. And it's a shell anyway. And so I'll have different classes. I'll have different power levels, and I have enough cars where I can do about maybe $250. You just show up and drive. I got gas.
So you'll let them drive your cars. That's even better. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll prep. Well, I have my comp cars are only for me. I'll give them a ride along, but I'll build some cars. Like I got a few Miatas as well, where I'll
make them real friendly, a little, less stiff, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So they'll get into that and ride along. I've taught a few people how to drift and everything, and they always get angry because they start in the parking lot with pylons or cones. Yeah. And they're like, man, I want to go to the track. I'm like, before you go to the track, you got to do this figure eight. You got to do this.
Yeah. Well, just learn. Learn in an environment where it doesn't kill the car to spin it out. Yeah. That's the thing that makes it tough with the track is that you drop a wheel off, you can end up in a wall from a simple mistake. Yeah. So and then I'm
pretty sure you've been on wet grass before. And wet grass, you stop when you hit something. It's like
I had it's a long story, but I had a minor snafu in an STI once on a wet track. So, but it's interesting. I didn't bring this up in the beginning, but I wanted to touch on it real quick. Is the fact that you reference grip all the time as a thing, like as competition. I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah, I'm Japanese now.
Yeah, that's not a term I ever hear used, like grip versus non-grip or whatever. But I guess grip makes sense too if it's a strong drifter world out. If there's a lot more drifters, then grip makes sense as just the opposite of drifting. Yeah.
I've been here way too long where like I don't call a e-brake anymore. It's called a hand brake or a side brake. And I've been here 11 and a half years now, man. So like I honestly, when I look at the gauge, like I'm reading like KPA and bar now. Like I don't look at PSI anymore. So I got to actually convert like how much PSI is that? And it's you've been in like Newton meters now. It's like my thing. Like what is foot pounds, inch pounds? Like I got my stuff, man. But being American now and being my first guy here was like I had to write on my gauge. This is 35 PSI.
Right.
And I had and then what sucks is when it gets uncalibrated, then it becomes 25 psi and things like that. So the Japanese there's actually in Japan, drifting is actually looked down upon in Japan, believe it or not.
Okay.
You got the pro guys, and then that's pretty much they're like the gatekeepers, and there's more guys that are into grip because grip is safer. Track day against Tsukuba, I did my first track day at Tsukuba, and I did well considering the car. I had a Subaru that I converted to a truck, converted to rear wheel drive, so I totally took the Subaru heart out of it, and the guys were laughing at me and pointing at me. They call it handmade when you make a car. Like every car is handmade. So they were laughing and pointing at me. I was putting bumpers on. So they was like, this guy, what is he going to do? First lap, I come back into the paddock. They like mouth open wide. Like the car is actually fast. So I had the engine and suspension. And there were 75 cars there. I ended up having the 48 fastest time because there was NSXs, GTRs, Lotus. Sure. There was like all this stuff. I actually I got put into the pro class by my drifting having pro license, and then I came out the first lap and I looked at the guy. He looked at me. He nodded. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go down to the class below me because these cars is clearly they're just fast. And I was for the guys out there who don't know, even if you're a competitive driver, they're just simply overpowering you. You're a liability.
Because your pace isn't fast enough.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You become dangerous.
Right. So my lines are good, but the car they're just blowing around me, and I'm like, dude. And I'm like, fuck, man, I can't really show my skills, so let me back off. And then I'm in a class below me now, I'm lapping everybody, and they're in RX-7s, GTRs, and now I'm going around them, and I'm like, man, this is not really fun. So next time I go there, I'll take my S2000 and have some tires on it and got aero and things like that. So I did it to show. I did that video, or I did that to show my customers a point that again I paid. I built the car for $1,200. It was given to me for free. I took it apart, put it back together, won a car show, then I went to Tsukuba, and I did it to show a point that I can build over crazy cars, over the top cars, but most people can't afford that, so I don't want to target those guys. I want to target guys who need suspension, engine work done, things like that, because that's going to keep my shop open. But the biggest thing I want to show guys, like, hey man, you can go out there with the GTR, suspension, good tires, a decent seat, and you can win. You can actually do well and not have to have. You don't need an 800 horsepower car. And everybody, I was that guy too back in the day. You see the 800 horsepower GTR, this all-wheel drive, losing traction and still laying down 58 seconds as a Tsukuba. That's cool, but most people can't build that. And that's the thing I try to push out. So and I know, like, again, I'm pretty sure again you get guys there who come with their really powerful cars, and they're slow. Well, I mean, and that's, people get a wake up call. They get a wake up call all the time, especially when they see, and they always assume the car has something in it, like you said. I mean, when I got the fourth gen Miata. It was the fastest Miata by far in terms of in stock form, and you're turning times that people are like, oh, what mods do you have on it? I'm like, nothing. I got stickier tires, 200 tires or whatever for the competition, but there's nothing done to the motor. There's nothing anything like that. But of course in autocrossing it's even more so. I mean, you're not high speed. There's too many places you can make mistakes. There's no straightaways. So you're at the edge of grip all the time, and if you don't know how to do that, you lose a ton of time. I mean, I could go out there in my Transit Connect work van and probably beat a lot of people, but and that's what a lot of people need. I mean, I remember early on when I first started autocrossing, I remember people in guys in Corvettes that would get mad they were getting beat by guys in Miatas and on the same track, and it's about driving. It's not about the car. So. Work on the nut behind the wheel, they say. I call it when I call it the driver mod. I tell guys, I get a lot of guys now, and it's kind of cool, man, to it's weird to get younger guys. I'll get guys that message me on Facebook, Instagram. I don't really check those too much, but they'll email me and say, hey man, how about this setup? And I want to give advice, but at the same time, I never met the guy. I never sat next to him. I don't know how he is on the throttle. I don't know how he is on his brakes, how his steering inputs are. So it's kind of hard to give virtual advice. But I just tell the guys the basics, man. Hey, before you do any mods, drive the car as is.
Yeah.
because a lot of guys, again, and I was one of those guys back in the day too, before I met you, I would just throw all this stuff in there. My 240 was turbo by the time I got there, but the brakes sucked, the tires sucked, my brake booster didn't work. And I forgot the guy who was helping you out with the school that day. He was co-driving at the schools. I only did one. I did 2 schools, I believe, but the one at the H lot, he got in the car and he was really nice not to tell me my car was crap. Yeah. Because he was like, man, your brakes, like the booster didn't work. It didn't work at all. So the booster was hooked up, but it felt like the car was off. So it was just the hardest pedal ever.
Yeah, yeah.
And the steering, the alignment sucked. The had camber. And he's like, yeah, man. He was nice as he could be about it. He was like, yeah, man, your car needs work, man. But it's not bad, man. I was like, yeah, cool. And now knowing what I know now, I'm like, that car was horrible, man. It was just, it was bad. It was bad, man. And but it's cool to go back and see what it was. And for me, I got in the game at 99, 2000. So I got in the game right when the media cameras start coming about. So I actually, my whole motorsports career is documented by photos and videos where yourself and your dad, there was nobody carrying cameers back.
Yeah. I know. It was a lot harder to get the footage and everything as it is now. Yeah. Kind of like any, I mean, everybody's got
it's saturated now.
They've all got video and pictures of everything. So
yeah, so you got 5 GoPros on a right side, and it's like now I don't record. And guys thought I quit racing because it's just, man, I had to go to the track. I already do my prep here in the shop. I do my pre-tech inspection at the track just because of out of habit. But when I get to the track, the camera is honestly one of the last things I do now, unless I'm at, like, of course, it's Kubo my first time. If I go to Suzuka or a new track, I'm going to do it. But if it's a track I've been on 50 times already, like my local track is 45 minutes away, and I have another circuit about an hour away, and I've done them a bunch, so it's like I don't – you
don't need video from it.
I don't need video.
I'm kind of the same way. I don't do much video with racing at all. So for the same reason, you've done it enough times that it's not changing anything for you.
Unless it's a cool car. Like, I mean, unless it's like, I just drove a Tesla. Actually, it's funny that you bring it up. I put a video up my last week. I drove a Model S for the first time, and now I need an electric car. Now I'm going to take a Miata. I'm going to take a Nissan Leaf and make an EV car, because in Japan they have a EV series now. They have an actual EV series. Okay. Where they allow original EVs like the Tesla, or they call it EV. I'm not sure what they call it in the States, but it's called electronic.
EV is still a term that's used, but most people don't use it.
Yeah. It's kind of like the grip thing and everything. But so now they got the different. Now I got all these petrol cars, and now I want to make a EV car just to be able to enter the races. It doesn't matter. It could be RX-7, it could be a Skyline, long as it's EV, battery power only. Yeah. They allow any mods and stuff like that. Of course, they're going to check it out to make sure it's mounted properly. Your batteries are situated where they're not going to be a fire hazard. Right. But that's a new thing now. As far as now that we're talking about that, have you seen any EV guys or electric car guys do autocross? Or
so the Tesla, mainly the Tesla, came out a couple of years ago, I guess, was the first when you first started seeing, maybe 3 years now. Right. And last year at Nationals, it won its class. And there was a lot of controversy about it, because the problem with the electric cars, the guy that won was a good driver. Some would argue he didn't deserve to win, like he's not that good. Right. I would say I wouldn't really agree with that, but but anyway, he won, but the issue with the electric cars is the fact that the software can be updated so simply all the time. Right. And there's so many things like that. And then, and quite honestly, the Teslas have an incredible advantage with their traction control system. I mean, one of the most surreal things you'll ever see in that respect is, what a Pro Solo is? The drag race start. It's a Christmas tree with a drag race start. You peel, you take off at the same time, and then you peel off and you run mirrored courses, and you come back, switch sides, and do it again. And so it's a drag race, okay, the beginning of it. And in the rain, watching an STI launch against a Model 3 performance launch. The interesting thing is, an STI in the rain, you rev it up and you still just drop the clutch from $6,000 or whatever. You want it to spin. You want to keep it in the power band and take off, and it's going to take off really well. The difference is the Tesla does not spin. The traction control is so instantaneous, which of course we don't want traction control on all these other cars because it retards the timing and does braking and things like that. But in the Tesla, it's so instantaneous and on each wheel that it simply just doesn't spin. It just goes.
Right. Makes like a little sudden noise and then it's gone.
Yeah. And watching the Tesla leave in the rain against the STI was humorous. I mean, the Tesla took off as if it was dry.
Right.
And the STI was, looked like it had just run against a non-STI in the dry, where an STI launches and just goes because it's all-wheel drive versus a rear-wheel drive or a front-wheel drive. And that's what it looked like. So anyway, the Teslas have been bumped up a class, or a couple classes actually, and they're now starting like an EV class, class, which will be primarily Teslas. And right now, it's not an official class or anything. It's one, the same phases that they go through where they introduce a class, and it's sort of for it's not for the jacket, as we call it, the main championship. Right away. So we'll see where that goes. But I think they want to have just an EV class where if those cars have those advantages, then there's going to be one or two cars that you're going to want to have of EVs. But really, it's going to be Teslas. I don't know. I guess the Porsche Taycan, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Taycan or Taycan, something like that.
Yeah. The one that's a Turbo S, even though there's no turbo on it.
Yeah. There's marketing right there. You're going to buy it. It's like, there's no turbo in there. It's just turbo, I guess a turbo mode or a turbo button.
Well, it's simply that it's that fast, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that world is really cool. I've driven the Model 3 performance package, and I like it a lot. As long as I can afford it, we're gonna get one at some point if I can afford to do it, because the cars are just neat. They're really cool.
Yeah, I heard a lot of things about, like, of course, my buddy, he bought a Model S, base Model S, 2014, and before that he had a SEMA, which is like a Q45 in the States, a V8, and he was like one of the stance guys, and he was. But also one thing I noticed, like yourself being in the sound, Julian now being mechanical, then like JR, who mentioned JR was an IT guy. One thing I noticed, and all your buddies that do like the autocross and the mechanical engineers as well, I noticed a trend where the car guys were really into it. Like they all come from like a tech kind of background, and it's like a weird thing. And or in drifting, for example, a lot of guys come from BMX, or it's like everybody when you get in a circle and talk, you realize that we all got the same things in common. It revolves around tech. It revolves around like doing something active or sports or something like that. Then you kind of get a trade-off if you move to a state that doesn't have snow. I got snowboard here as well. And I didn't pick snowboarding up to 2008. And then like I was like, man, this is like drifting standing up. And then I first I'm bombing it. Then I had to learn how to carve. And the reason I had to learn how to carve is because I was going to hit a girl or hit a tree. And but I stay away from parks because I don't want to. You
don't need to break any bones.
I can't control myself. Same reason I don't ride bikes, because I'm 37 now and I never rode anything bigger than a 200cc. So I noticed we all have the same traits, same things, and it's kind of cool to see everything come together. Where we all in the cars, we all doing the same thing and things out there. So my thing is just I hope the culture it's definitely going to get better. As far as like the Tesla stuff, when I heard a lot of stuff about it, and I was like, all right, cool. For me, again, I haven't driven to the limit of R35 GTR. So it's like until I get one and really, really push it, I see the reviews, I see the guys driving it, but I want to feel it for myself. And for the Tesla, I was like, all right, cool, I'll drive one eventually. And within 5 minutes, I was like, dude, I gotta have one. Like, it's pretty neat.
And they do handle well, which is nice. It's a good thing. I'm trying to remember. There's it's not Randy. Is it Randy Popes? Somebody, a pro driver did a lot of the original like Nürburgring tuning and handling of the car initially, and I'm not sure if they're still involved or not. But now a lot of that'll be Julian's realm too. He'll be doing. He's doing. I know there's more to the title, but it's basically vehicle dynamics. I mean, he's test driving, but a lot of it is going to be on the final software end. So he'll be dealing more with the traction control systems and things like that. is what he'll be testing for. So, but yeah. But yeah, it's a neat world coming, in terms of those vehicles, and I'm not ready to give up combustion motors.
Oh, no. I don't think they're ever gonna get rid of. Yeah. I don't think that's ever gonna go away. Some people, like I told a guy the other day, they get into the mode where they feel it has to be this or that. They got to choose between. And what my buddy, he kind of is like he's starting to do 3D printing of, because with the Tesla, pretty sure there's not like a lot of aftermarket support yet because it's so brand new.
Yep.
So now guys are making things, different wheels. I'm designing actually a set of wheels for him that we're going to get made, and different things like that. But the some guys feel you got to be either or. It's like, man, you can do both. And I don't think with the oil, honestly, this industry is way too big to not have. You see, what's that? Demolition Man. Where they had where it was Dennis Leary, and they had the underground. I think it was like a Nova or something like that, underground.
Right.
And he's like, and he's like, driving in on the street, and he's like, "What's this car with gas and everything?" Like, I don't think they're ever going to be. They're not going to ban. Maybe there'll be a more efficient fuel. And I run
there's some companies out there. I know Mazda has been working. I can't remember any of the names offhand, but you can look this stuff up. There's a company, and then I think Mazda was working with them at one point, but. Where they make these combustion motors that are something ridiculous, like 40 to 50% more efficient than current ones, and it's this huge leap. I'm trying to remember the significance of the motor. I want to say there's 2 pistons in each cylinder or something of that sort. It's something wacky that's way different from what we currently have, and it makes it that much more efficient. But I think the advancement of any of that technology is just so cool to watch. And I mean, we have been pretty stagnant for a long time. So whether it be the internal combustion motor getting more efficient by crazy new designs, things like when the rotary, obviously when the rotary was new, that was a big deal. And then the EV stuff I think is cool too, but I'm always going to want the sound. I'm always going to want the feel and the revs. And that's where this car is so significant is because it's so raw. I mean, there's just, I've got a shifter in there that's got no bushing. First of all, the motor and the transmission is all hard mounted. There's no bushings.
Vibration.
Yeah. There's no bushings in the rear diff. There's no bushings at all in the car. Not a single one. In fact, God, I never really thought about it that way. I don't think there's a single bushing in the entire car.
Really? Is this all hard mounted?
I'm just trying to think if there's a bushing anywhere. I don't think there is. I don't think there is. I think everything's hard mounted. But even the shifter I installed afterwards, so it came with, it's an E36 transmission. And I put a Bimmer World race shifter in there, which eliminates all of it. And it's essentially just, the rod comes back and you got a stick and that's it. There's no lever arm or anything like they had in the transmission before with the bushings on each end of it. So, it's just, it's click. I mean, you feel it. It's everything's there.
Mechanical,
and everything with the steering. The steering does have power steering, but it's a power assist. It's a separate unit. So it's a manual rack with a power assist unit that's right under the steering wheel. For the assist, and it's not much. I mean, it's just a little bit, but everything about it's so raw. And sometimes I don't like it, but most of the times I love it. Sometimes as I've geared it a little more towards the street lately, it's getting better, and I'm able to drive with one hand. I mean, literally, it's got a dynamic toe setup, which is great for racing in the rear. But it's horrible for the street because it gives you bump steer.
Yeah.
So when you've got expansion joints and things like that, it's horrible. But as I softened the spring rate up a lot, it got way better. I mean, it was to the point where I'm driving 55, 60 down a local highway here and hitting expansion joints, and I'm hanging on like correcting after just going in a straightaway. So it was pretty bad. But I'm running a third of the spring rate that I was before. In the rear now, just to make it a little more enjoyable. So, but yeah, I think this is what, getting a car like this has just kept me so passionate. One, the good and the bad, it makes me work more on the car is bad, but it also makes me work more on the car, which is good because I'm connected to it more. I mean, I spent 3 or 4 hours on the damn headlights today because essentially there's a flaw in the design of this lens that they put in this thing, and it doesn't even fit right. I mean, I'm literally taking out a grinding wheel and I'm grinding part of the headlight lens, the backside of it off, so that the bezel clamp can clamp the way it should. Yeah. But because it wasn't working right, I'm driving down the road and the lens is falling out. And the lens is falling out. Now I'm carrying tools to fix the lens when it falls out. And then when it falls out, it's dangling. And if I don't catch it right away, it's dangling so long it severs the wire and shorts out the whole system. So I had a couple of things like that I worked on today, which is not normal car stuff. But the suspension, as I was pointing out, you've got push rods and bell cranks and control arms with all different settings, and it's kept me so connected to the car to have to work on it. Again, the good and the bad, having to work on it more than I'd like. But at the same time, there are times when I come out, one day when I got, soon after I got the car, I spent 10 hours doing alignment on it because it had no basis, it had no setup. Right. And so reading up and then sitting there and going, okay, well, these control arms need to do this, and I'm gonna need this much negative camber, and this push rod's got to hook into the belt crank here instead of here, so I get a better spring rate, and this and that, and then the dynamic toe in the rear. I mean, there's so many things on the car that's so raw, and it's all right there. It's all just rod ends, and you just crack the nut loose and you change the rod.
Yeah, very little changes.
Yeah, and the ride height differences and the negative camber and toe and like everything. There's just so many things that you can do with it. Kind of a pain in the butt. Like I just keep coming back to that. It's kind of a pain, but so cool at the same time.
It is.
It
is.
So that's why I say that getting this car has while it's been a pain, it's also sort of rejuvenated my love for cars, because I've never been that much of a mechanic, and I still not. I'm not a motor guy. I have never torn a motor down. But I've always worked on suspensions. Even when I had a Jeep hobby, I did a lot of work with the suspension stuff. And so that's where I'm really falling in love with this again, is dealing with the suspension. And then, like I said, it's just so raw, and you get to drive it and you feel everything right away. I mean, every little alignment change and spring rate and tire pressure and everything is right there. So, yeah.
My personal opinion from like you said about the engine stuff. My personal opinion being my shop is pretty much one stop. You can come, you can get I don't offer. I paint and do body work for myself. As most drifters, you have to become your own body guy or mechanic because you can't afford to go to the shop. So I've got painting skills. I use it for myself. I offer suspension settings. I just got a four post lift that I'm gonna do my own in-shop alignments because I pay for them. Get it somewhat of a deal, but going to the shop all the time to do alignments kind of gets old. Yep. The engine building and engine tuning and stuff like that. So I do pretty much everything in shop. I will say, man, I stand on it. Suspension tuning is harder than engine tuning to me.
Oh yeah,
engine tuning, you just set it. It's the AFR is 14.5 or whatever you want it to be at, and then you just pretty much. I tell my customers when I do tuning, I'm not the wizard. I'm not the guy who try to say I'm a wizard. I'm like, hey man, I need to bring this down to normal. I need to make 800 horsepower run normal, as normal as you can run with camshafts and things like that. Because some guys, they don't understand bigger cams. You got to idle it higher, or you're gonna stall it. So, like if you want your idle to be normal, we got to put those cams back in. I'm gonna charge you another $700 to remove all the stuff, put the cams back in. This guy, I'll go with a high idle. I eventually break it down to him like that. But suspension tuning, when I do that, actually, I do the settings. When I do the install, I charge a total between time, labor, lift time. It's no secret. It's about $680. Yeah. $680 equivalent. And they're like, man, why is it so high? I'm like, dude, there's more to just putting those things in there. You got to do preload. You got to do height. You got to also the linear spring. The springs are going to break in. And then when you come back 2 weeks, it's going to be actually lower. And the gas is going to charge. So I explain all that stuff to them. They're like, man, I didn't know it was that detailed. So actually about 2 weeks after I do the job, I always have the car come back to check final height. To see if they need any damper adjustments. And I teach them a little bit of things like, hey, the damper's neutral. If you want to go higher, you go higher, 32 clicks up, 15 clicks down. And they're like, man, this is evolved. I'm like, dude, suspension, you got 3,000 pounds, 2,000 pounds. You got to get all that weight translated down to the tires. If you got crazy suspension, you can have 800 horsepower and a crappy suspension. And
you can't do anything with it.
It's not doing anything. Yeah. So when I break it down to them, I'm like, dude, how is this MRS faster than my GTR? at 128 horsepower and I got 280, 300. I'm like, dude, I can put my power to the ground.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
Well, and then weight too. A lot of people don't. They forget about weight. Weight's a huge thing. Which again, this car here. I mean, it's what makes cars fast. And in autocrossing, it took me a while to really realize it. But you lean way more towards weight than power. If you had the option of, let's say, a 1,500-pound car with 200 horsepower, like which is basically what this is, versus a 2,000-pound car with 300 horsepower, let's say, whatever. I'm going to go with the lighter car every time because it's just going to end up handling better, and that's going to translate to faster coming out of the turns faster and being able to go deeper into the turns, and being able to break the car down.
Yeah, braking. Braking is another thing too. It's hard. I try to be non-biased when I'm. Because as a shop, different levels, different customers, guys want different goals. They see Fast and the Furious, they want this, and that series has been a blessing and a curse for getting guys in the cars, and then also making now I got into actually cars right around the same time the Fast and Furious 1 came out, so I always have that hanging over my head. Yeah, so I'm grouped into the Fast and Furious guys, but I get the 1 through 3 was okay. Now they're outlandish. They're just not even about cars anymore. Yeah. And so I get a lot of these young guys in, and they see YouTube videos, and I got to bring them down. Like, hey man, so what are you looking to do? Are you going to do grip or circuit racing, drifting? You want an all around car? So then I have to have meetings with the guys to let them know, hey man, like if you want to do this and this is your goals, spending money on this twin turbo kit is gonna defeat the purpose of what you want to get to. And different things. So I end up being a counselor. And it makes my jobs easier because they know what they're going to get. I know what I'm going to put out and everything. And I have a high quality of work. And I offer warranties and things like that. And one thing I tell the guys too, it doesn't matter how much money you spend on the parts. They're going to break. They're just going to break a little bit later than OEM stuff. And that's what a lot of guys, they figure they spend this much money on HKS or Garrett or Tomei. I'm like, dude, it's going to still break. It's just going to last a little bit longer. So I have to tell them that because not trying to cover my ass, but also let them know, hey man, if you go abuse it, it's going to break. It's still, and just because you spent a lot of money on it doesn't mean it lasts, forever. So F1 cars break. F1 cars. I mean, if you look, I put a chart up the other day, like a couple months ago, and this was 2018. The set of tires, the crew, all the stuff that goes into one F1 team, like the air, the jacks, I'm like, they don't know about this stuff. I'm like, dude. All this stuff is expensive. Like that one tire costs more than your car. And in retrospect, man. And they so they really get them. Like, and I always use F1 as an example because I'm like, look, if F1 cars break, trust me, man, your Civic is going to break. Yeah. It's going to break, man. So I say that again to those guys, not to again scare them, but let them know, hey man, it's if you want to do this again, if you put a lot of parts on it. And go to car shows, your car will last 35, 45 years. Yeah. But if you go to one autocross event or one track day, you hit a zebra at the wrong angle. Now your alignment is off. You got a bent tie rod. You got a bent upper, and it's like minutely bent, but I could feel that the wheel is now like this instead of being straight. Sure.
Yep. And, that happened to me on this. I've been
So for the suspension on that, is it the links? Are they solid links or are they ball joints, or how's the steering rack on that car?
It's a manual rack, and it's basically it's. I mean, I don't know how to describe it because I guess I'm not technical enough on it. But they're just tie rods coming from the uprights, right from the uprights with a rod end. And a rod end on the other side of the on each side of the rack itself.
So your tie rods face down or point up, like the actual part of it. Like for your rack's in front of the engine or behind it. It's in front of the engine. Okay,
in front of the engine. Yeah. And the tie rods are in the front of the control arms.
Okay. So they got the reason I asked because I didn't know if it was just like usually a lot of the cars they got like they're just still it's like. Bush, you're gonna go over to show me, man.
I mean, it's right there. You can't miss it. I don't know how well you can see it.
I can see it.
So this is the tie rod here, and then can you see in there? That's
I guess.
Here's where. Can you see my finger?
Yep.
Yeah, right there. So but this is what's so cool about it. I mean, again, it's so everything's right there. I can see my rod ends. I can see all my adjustments there.
Yeah, so quick, man. You don't got to take anything off.
No,
I see the traction rod and the tire. It's like cool, man. They have all the stuff right there. But like the F1 cars, it's cool to see all that stuff on the outside, man. But then it is exposed. So like, you see the guys out there F1 where they run into another car. Then they could swap out the nose cones. They could do a lot of quick maintenance that most guys, when we crash or something, it's like, now we got to go get alignment. They can do all this stuff right in the pits in seconds, man. So it's pretty cool to see that.
Wow, it's like their pit stops. How long their pit stops are? It's like 2 seconds or whatever.
And it's crazy how strong they are, but how delicate they are at the same time. It's like the balance, man, where like they could just ruin your. I guess like I just start following F1 is like if you ever crash, if you can limp it back to the pits, you can get it serviced. But if you're dead in the water, it's like your day is over, man.
Yeah.
All that prep, all that money. Then you got a teammate. And the Netflix thing is doing a good job of highlighting how the drama is. And
right.
I didn't know I didn't know like, the teammates didn't like each other. Yeah, but it's competitive. Well,
that's in the end, they're still trying to like fight for their lives, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. So that's where you get that drama from the teammates. But just changed my angle there a lot.
I'm not gonna keep you too much longer, man. It's about 9 o'clock here, and I gotta go open up everything, man. But again, I definitely want to talk to you again, man. Like I said, it's been a great time, and you're one of the few guys out there that I definitely want to get with. Like that I'll say, where it's in my motorsports career, where like there's a handful of guys. My guy James Felix out there, who he's a Subaru guy, and he run a lot of autocross with Civics and everything. I'm pretty sure you guys may not have met each other. He's out in White Marsh area. But I'm pretty sure you guys been in the same event. I guarantee you guys been in the same event. He used to run a Civic with a EF Civic Rid with had a B18 swap in it, and he was STI guy, so one of the STI guys out there and everything. So and he transferred into drag. So now he had a GC8 RS 2.5 that's like 900 horsepower and 7 seconds and everything. So he kind of flip flops between drag and everything. I started actually, believe it or not, drag racing like most people, because that's the freest thing you can do.
Right.
And then I realized again quickly, I mean, my car was at the fastest point was like 13 seconds, which is nothing now. I mean, Hellcat is what, 10, 11 seconds from the factory, or 10 seconds. So it's like drag racing. I was just like, I'm not gonna. The money I spent trying to be a drag racer, I could have been putting that money into being an autocross guy long ago, and I would have had a more beneficial outcome. But it's definitely cool, man. As far as like I said, you being you're a dad, I got 2 sons, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and I got a new. She's 11 and a half months. She turns 1 next month, and I don't teach them. I don't show them anything. We got course cars all over the house.
Right.
They got. I mean, we got them the toy cars, man, and they flip the car over, and I don't teach them this stuff, man. They just got the hammers, they banging on it, and it's like,
so that's,
man,
they're gonna imitate you, right?
Yeah, it's cool, and they love the shop. When they come to the shop, they don't like to leave. So they come to the shop, they see all the cars, they start the engine up and everything. I keep it, the loud cars, I don't start them up too much because the ears are delicate, but they're into it. And then my one son, I got him in a Barbie Jeep, right? And I was going to upgrade it to 24 volts. So I was like, let me learn the 12 volts first. So now he's in this thing where the 2-year-old is actually stirring, but the 4-year-old still likes to crank it all the way to the right and just do donuts. I'm like, dude, what are you like? And I'm like screaming at him, like, and my wife was like, shut them out there, like, calm down. He's still a kid. And it's like, so now I got to learn how to like, hey man, I got to have fun with it because I'm getting serious with a 4-year-old. Yeah. And a Barbie Jeep.
So part of that is that what ends up happening is that you care so much about them doing better that you start getting upset when they don't. And it's not because they're failing you. It's because you want to see them. You want to see them succeed. And so that's where you start to get serious, and that's where the the stage mom, stage dad, kind of what's it called, the I can't remember what it's called, usually it's a baseball term.
We're talking about the overbearing parent. They're like they call it the parents that kind of like, I guess they coach from the sidelines, or they just hard on the kid, they scream at him and things like that.
What's the name of that? It's
I
something
forgot.
it's something. There's a term for that, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, man. So this is cool. But for me, man, myself personally, again, being what I'm involved again, so I don't really I got my studio here, so I just started making music again, my own stuff, and so they come in here. Sometimes they'll see me making music. They'll come try to play with the keyboards and stuff like that. And then I do martial arts. I have right to the right of me, I have my jiu-jitsu mats. So I do my training and stuff there because I don't have time now with the shop to go out to the and jiu-jitsu most of the time starts at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, where these guys get off of work. So they've already done their work. For me, my work really never stops.
Yeah.
So I got my own stuff here. So I do my drilling here. Then they get on the mats with me and do stuff. And so they'll be able to pick one of the things I do or nothing at all. But I'm pretty sure they'll do one of the three things that I do.
Yeah, they usually emulate you in some way.
Yeah.
Or either that or it's around the house or cooking or something like that. It's they'll get it from somewhere. So
I just can't wait till my oldest is because I really want to, when I go to the track and do my test days, sometimes he wakes up and I'll bring the to pre-stage. I'll have the car loaded up on a trailer. I'll park the trailer outside, which is like the 3-car trailer. So he'll see the car and he'll be like, oh, I want to go. And like, I'll feel bad because I was like, he's too small to take out there,
right?
Be unsupervised and everything. So I was like, man, I can't wait till he gets old enough he can be cognitive and not know, like, don't run in the pit lanes are pretty safe here, but they're unmanaged. So we go to the track here, there's no marshals there. If there's no event, you show up, you tech yourself, and if you blow up on the track, then you're gonna pay for the oil spill. Right. So Japan is there's no insurance. You sign a release waiver. Japan is very opposite of the States. The safety is there. But they have an honor system where you, the driver, is supposed to check out your car and know that you don't have oil leak, you don't have loose tie rods, you don't have loose this and that. So they leave it up to the driver. And as a result, there was a death about the first death, I believe, involved with drifting about 2.5 years ago. A whole tire assembly, rear wheel assembly, a rotor, caliper, wheel, and everything came off the car, hit a girl in the head.
Wow!
And she was spotting the. She died at the hospital about 2 days later. She was spotting for her boyfriend at the time, which was a friend of the guy who wheel came off. So their relationship ended, because he blamed him for the wheel coming off, and then the track shut down, and he had to get down. They got the NASCAR fences with the whole fence with the curve over. Right. So it, and it changed tracks all over Japan because now Jeff came in and said, hey, your track's not safe enough. All walls have to be this high. Spectators have to stand over here. So it's not that it's Wild West, but it's just there was no issues. Right. So like the States. So now you can't go to Summit without, paying $240 versus my track. I get paid $40 for a whole day. Yeah. I got the whole track to myself for a whole day. Right. And $80 is a splitting session. So it's $80 gets you a whole day. $40 is half session. Yeah. So it's the difference is there, but again. Thanks to you, man, and all the guys there for showing me. Like we didn't have a lot of time together, but just saying, hey, man, make sure I didn't know until I came to that first FedEx that, hey, man, check your tie rods. I didn't think to check that. My tie rods were, if I took them off my hand, you could take the whole ball joint and just go like this. Like there's no grease in it, there's no voodoo in there. And the dude's like, nah, that's a fail, man. You're gonna fail. Yeah. And, you take the wheel and shake it. It shakes left and right, axial, radio play. Like, nah, dude, your bearings are bad. Yeah. So now, I do my checks. I do performance inspections. I'm like, hey, guy, I tell customers straight up, if I took your car to the track, I would blow your engine. Well, not blow the engine, but I would blow your couplers and blow everything off within one lap. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, dude, your couplers are old. Your band clamps are oversized. Different things, and they like, oh man, my car. It's not that it's a bad car. It's just not. It's not prep, right? It's not what's in your mind. It's not that JGTC R32. Yeah. That's destroying everything. That's not your car yet. Your car is far from that. Right. And so I'll take them for a drive in one of my prep cars, and like, oh man, I see the difference. I can feel it. You hear the transmission. Everything's solid. As a solid, I tell me you don't want to make it solid because I'm like, well, I got to check my subframe because the solid thing promotes cracking. So you got to check all that stuff for wear and things like that. So I think I do a good job of tailoring it to guys to what their level is. And I'm not a teacher, but just trying to give them like little knowledge of like things I learned, the people I've met that's been inspirational in my life and everything. Again, yourself, your family. I didn't get a chance to really talk to your dad a little bit, but he was just kind of in the background. With the red Mini with the checkered, the checkered hood.
He still has it.
Yeah.
He still has that.
Yeah.
He doesn't drive
I remember him getting out there and doing I believe you just jumped on either you jumped in the car or somebody jumped in the car with the Mini and did a few laps, and I was like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
That thing was quick, man. But hey, brother, like I said, I really got to get out of here and start opening up my shop. It's 9:10 here. It's been a great time talking with you, man. And do you got any I guess social media or anything like that promote, or you don't do any of that stuff, man?
No, I mean, no, because my industry do it that way. But no, I mean, I appreciate it. I'm glad to talk to you. I'm glad to be able to see you again.
Yeah, man. It's like one of your students actually grew up and listened to the things that you, because I mean, being an instructor now and teaching martial arts, and I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, which is 2 away from the top, and 1 away from the top rank with black belt, and being doing the car instruction. It's just like when I taught a guy how to drift, and then I get out the car and I just stand back and smile. Like, I taught this guy how to drift 3 hours ago. He didn't know the difference between clutch modulation and the biggest thing in drifting. Everybody just thinks it's throttle. Like, that's not actually. You're not. You know, it's like you're. It's like, I guess, dropping a tumbler or a forklift.
Right.
You're steering with the rear tires, which that's a hard concept for people to pick up.
Right.
Like, you're not all throttle. It's times that you're all throttle, but most of the times you're right in between, modulating.
You're somewhere in between. Yep. Yeah. To always control it. Yeah.
And the clutch kicks get expensive. So then advance is like, you teach your guys a clutch. You can still get the same revving up, but you modulate it. You don't have to kick it in violently and let it out, pop the clutch.
Right.
You can just, modulate it. So it's levels to it. And most of the guys, I just do beginner stuff and I let them figure it out. But yeah, man, it's just again, great to talk to you. As again, my first grip driving, quote unquote, instructor.
I'll have to use that term now, grip.
Yeah. And it's been, I mean, honestly, man, it's been a nice guy to newcomers, which I've been that guy where like a new drifter come in and I kind of scold them because they're saying the wrong things.
Yeah.
Then I realized like this guy's just new to it, relax, and then he'll get into it and everything, man. So it's good to go, man. So again, brother, good to talk to you. Definitely, I know Julian is very busy with the getting the new job set up, but I definitely like to talk to him, man. So
yeah, well, he might still have some time. So you might be able to catch him. I can shoot him a text and let him know that you're interested.
Yeah. And I do know, like, he's working for Tesla, man. I'm prior military, so I know I'm not going to ask him, like, I know there's a lot of proprietary things there, and but I'll let him divulge as much as he can. I know they got release orders and all that stuff, and I know all about it, man. So I hear my R34 GTR outside purring right now. He's he's early. He's like 30 minutes early, but it's all good. But hey, man, again, thanks, brother.
Great.
Get out of here.
Done.
Yep, and I'll edit this part out and everything a little bit later. But again, guys out there, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it to the podcast. Share the podcast, things like that to grow it. I'm not really into YouTube to make crazy amounts of money and all that stuff like that, but just share my knowledge. Introduce you to guys like Brian here, who has his own circle. But again, the biggest thing out there I say to you guys is we're all different. We all have different circles. So it's like, I learn more about you and learn more about myself, and the viewers learn more about everybody and everything. So be sure to send your questions and topics to podcast@pinkustyle.com. Again, share if you would like to. And with all this Corona stuff out there, get your cars ready, because when the season starts again, you don't want to be that guy like me who is 3 months into Corona, all your cars are still in pieces. So, you know what I mean? So get your cars ready, because I think there's going to be a late, like maybe November, December, and then it's or just save your money. Just have fun now and then come out next season strong, because it'll be a truncated season with everything. So it'll be crazy to wreck your car right now, and then you got the whole next season to get ready for it, things like that. So again, guys out there, be safe, be easy. Just send those questions, things to podcast@pinkustyle.com, and I'll be sure to answer those and bring them up in the next podcast. So again, it's going to be Donald signing off from Misawa, Japan. Brian from your West Virginia, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Correct. And see you guys later. So again, be safe. Donald out.
Amor.